Forgiveness is when other characters decide to bury the hatchet with each other. Face turn is when a baddie decides to step up to the plate and fight for good. If done right, they can both add up to a satisfying and much rewarded redemption, when a person changing from bad to good is ultimately accepted as the new norm, either by characters in-universe or the audience. How is redemption different from the other two? Let me explain. Yeah, I know, ponies are a little passé at this point, not that they're going away anytime soon, but consider Starlight Glimmer's story. She had her face turn moment, but while she was quickly forgiven, it didn't mean she was redeemed just yet. The thing is, during face turns, characters are usually in turmoil, losing their identity and having trouble figuring out who they really are. They are good guys, but they aren't redeemed. The redemption has to be a journey. And so, I want to pay tribute to some of my favorite stories about video game characters who struggled to redeem themselves and left us with a satisfying change of outlook. There are only a few requirements that I think can really cement a character's place on this list. 1. The believability of the change. They're not perfect, but they're making the effort to change or ditch old habits and beliefs. 2. The relatability/sympathy of the change. Watching them go through all this is no fun if we don't care about them. 3. If it's a long trek, how much are we invested in the journey? Give us some build-up and payoff, dang it! 4. How much have they really changed since they started? 5. How much can a player's choice hinder the experience? And 6. How much we experience the redemption with them. Do we feel like they truly earned it based on what we saw? Let's find out, shall we? I literally forgot what segment this was. Dang it, I'm always forgetting something. Especially like my purpose in life, whether it's supposed to be grand or small. But I think only by accepting my faults can I truly move forward in my... This feels like from a philosophical horror game. What are we talking about? Amnesia Dark Descent. Yeah, that makes sense. Waking up in a haunted castle with no memories or idea of who you are, only a name and a letter driving you to push forward. That is the premise behind Amnesia The Dark Descent, a psychological horror game released back in 2010. As you can guess from the title, you play as Daniel, an amnesiac who wakes up one day with no memories other than his name and a letter he found written by his former self telling him to kill the castle's owner. Oh, and that there's this eldritch ghost called the Shadow that haunts you and tries to kill you. Nothing wrong about that. Well, the best part about games like this is that you spend most of the game exploring the castle, solving puzzles and finding notes and books to try and find out more about your past. And, well, what you eventually find out is pretty insane. I won't go into all of Daniel's background since it takes a bit, but TLDR, he found a mysterious orb which summoned the Shadow to haunt him. And to get rid of it, he was kind of duped by the Duke of this castle, Alexander, to torture and murder prisoners to create a ritual to appease Casper the Deadly Ghost. I say kind of, because while Daniel doesn't know that some of these prisoners were innocent, he still willingly tortures and kills people for his own ends. Eventually, Daniel finds out about the torture of innocents after he kills a young girl to save his own skin. He realizes his own madness and succumbs to his guilt. Alexander wasn't killing these people to satisfy the Shadow, he was doing it to create a portal which lets him escape to an alternate world. Daniel swears revenge on Alexander but cannot contain his own guilt. He drinks an amnesia tonic to forget about his guilt and writes a letter, hoping his amnesiac self would avenge him and the people they killed. The game starts proper right after that. Due to this, we don't really see Daniel's descent into madness and despair. We see hints of it throughout the castle, and we finally see the whole truth towards the end of the game, but it still takes a while, so we don't really experience any of it until the tail end. Even then, Daniel's redemption only occurs due to player choice as well. Amnesia has 4 endings. If Daniel does nothing or hesitates to kill Alexander, the Shadow will come in and kill him. However, if Daniel succeeds in killing Alexander, the Shadow will actually forgive him and disappear. By gaining revenge on Alexander for the deaths that were caused, Daniel can live with a guilt-free conscience. He won't have to live with the pain because he can't fully remember what he did, but he can rest knowing that he at least took matters into his own hands and avenged the people who died. And the Shadow forgiving him is the ultimate symbolism of his redemption. Man, that was only number 10. That was a pretty solid one. Yeah, we must have some pretty good ones on this list. If only I could remember them. No, that's not a joke. My memory is really that crappy. I got a very bad feeling that these entries are going to be very long. No matter what happens, I will try to be concise and to the point. So, what's the next series? Shoot. Yeah, if we're going to talk about Dragon Age and its many well-developed characters, we're going to need to dive right in. So, let's talk about Leliana. Those who have seen my top 10 female characters know I have a particular fondness for Leliana. She's a former assassin who joined the clergy to atone for her past. When she was younger, she was trained on how to be a bard by her mentor Marjolaine. While working for her, she developed skills on how to both be manipulative and a ruthless killer. Unfortunately, this caused Marjolaine to become wary of Leliana and framed her for murder, which caused her to be arrested. Leliana was able to escape thanks to the assistance of Dorothea, a high-ranking priestess of the Andrastian Chantry. Due to her overwhelming regret, Leliana joined the Chantry to become a priestess herself. During the events of Origins, Leliana receives what she believes to be a vision from the Maker and joins the Warden on her path to her own personal redemption. Because of her past, she beats herself up a lot emotionally and holds herself to a higher standard than her other clergy. Depending on the choices of the player, she could either reaffirm her belief in the Maker or go back to her carefree older self where she took more pleasure in life. Either way, she's able to move on from her past. She even has the option to take revenge on Marjolaine if you so choose, or spare her. Dragon Age is a series that is very player choice based, so your decisions can change the outcome. When you get to Inquisition, she becomes the spy master of the Inquisition. Her new responsibilities lead her to be more focused on the job and less like the carefree self you saw in previous games. And again, depending on your choices, she could become the leader of the Chantry, completing her arc from Bard Assassin to Spy to Head Priestess. It's amazing, honestly. The main issue with Leliana is that her redemption, like Daniel's, is very heavily based on player choice. We could help her become more morally upright, but we could also twist her into becoming darker or even kill her earlier given the chance. These options allow for differing outcomes in the long run, but it's also what makes Dragon Age such an engaging series. Well, let's hope the next Dragon Age game is good. Not holding my breath. Okay, everyone, let's do a fun little exercise, alright? Think of the most impactful moment in gaming for you, alright? Think of the most memorable, the one that sticks with you, the one that changed the way you view gaming and the way many others viewed gaming. You got it? Okay. So, now imagine a video game where you get to play as the character that orchestrated that event. That was what playing as Yuri in Modern Warfare 3 was for me. Call of Duty is a series I have a long history with. While I haven't really played the games recently, I'm still a huge fan of the Modern Warfare series from way back when. The gameplay was tight and intuitive, and the multiplayer was fun, assuming you blocked messages and muted everyone, but what I really enjoyed was the story. And from that story, we got one of the most impactful moments in a game I have ever seen, shock and awe, where a nuclear explosion went off and killed over 30,000 people, including your current player character, after you play as him in his last moments. And who triggered this event? Vladimir Makarov. And right next to him was Yuri, one of the playable characters in Modern Warfare 3. Yuri was a close ally and friend of Makarov's throughout the lead up to Modern Warfare 1. He aided the ultra-nationalist party that was led by Makarov and his mentor Imred Zakayev, even being with both of them during Zakayev's original assassination attempt. After the shock and awe explosion, Yuri started to question his loyalty to the ultra-nationalist party. Before the No Russian massacre that occurs in Modern Warfare 2, Yuri tries to stop it by alerting the FSB and confronting Makarov. But Makarov finds out about the betrayal and shoots Yuri in response. But Yuri survived and joined Soap and Price in their goal to defeat Makarov. However, things don't get easier for Yuri. His connection to Makarov gets series protagonist Soap killed and almost gets himself killed by Price. However, by continuing to work with Price, together they were able to stop the current war and kill Makarov. Unfortunately, in the final mission of Modern Warfare 3, Yuri was killed by Makarov for good as he sacrificed himself to give Price one last shot, finishing off the final leg of Zakhaev's legacy. While Yuri didn't do any heinous acts while on screen, he was still an accomplice and terrorist who was involved in the deaths of thousands of people. In a way, Modern Warfare 3 was Yuri's redemption arc, as we see him aid Price and Soap to defeat Makarov, and finally, through his efforts, created a new peace between countries and ended the terrorist Makarov at the cost of his life. Now, if only we knew this was his redemption arc sooner. Looks like for this century I'm going to be talking about Fire Emblem Three Houses. 3, 2, 1.
Praise be to the goddess for my children shall be spared! They are all mine! Blue Lions forever!
Speaking of the Blue Lions, when you first encounter the house leader, Prince Dimitri Alexandra Blathid, yes, it's a TH, it's Welsh, get over it, he seems like the perfect monarch in training. Gallant, benevolent, inviting, just an overall charming guy. Yeah, well, so did Annie Wilkes from Misery, and remember how well that went?
I want her! And you murdered her!
It turns out that underneath those golden locks is a disturbed, bloodthirsty beast, or as Felix puts it, a boar. Hints of his true colors emerge once Ramire Village is targeted by blood magic, but when Edelgard comes into the picture, we'll get to her in a bit, he completely flips his cookies. In a fit of despair, he throws away his humanity and he cries out for blood. Edelgard's blood, to be precise. How dare you! But why? Well, it turns out that when they were kids, Dimitri and Edelgard were friends and step-siblings. However, tragedy befell old Goldilocks when he lost his family and friends in a bloody coup. And those who slither in the dark may or may not have played a part in that. They are also allied with the Flame Emperor, who turns out to be Edelgard herself, so the hatred is even more personal. Poor Dimitri was haunted by the literal voices of the dead, and to see one of his childhood friends basically betray him like this? Yeah, it's no surprise he'd go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and Edelgard's head.
We at Fiery Joker Productions do not endorse or encourage any bloodthirsty acts of vengeance by morally corrupt or mentally ill video game characters. That being said,
Man, life did my boy dirty!
Now, if you want to see Dimitri's path to redemption, you're gonna have to take his route in the game. And the other routes, he kinda gets nothing. He just kinda dies because story progression demands it. But in the Azure Moon route, we get to see Dimitri get the ultimate wake-up call. Someone else he cares about gets killed protecting him, and everything is put into perspective for him. He vows to change his ways and even offers to make peace with Edelgard, but she's not having any of that. She still tries to kill him and he's forced to slice her first. Unfortunately, they're two sides of the same coin and neither can live while the other survives. No matter what happens, if you don't pick their route, the snubbed one dies and they don't have much control over their faculties. Even though he gets incredibly ragey and angsty for a big part of the game, it's hard to get too mad at Dimitri because he lost everything he held dear. His innocence was ripped away from him, his father beheaded in front of him, and he ended up with a serious case of PTSD, or PDSD, post-Dusker stress disorder. Survivor's guilt does a lot of damage to someone like our prince here, and it looked like he was lost forever. But he got the reality check he deserved, he sought to make things right, and he even offered a compromise to his walking trigger object. He only finished Edelgard off because she literally gave him no other choice. Unfortunately, doing the right thing doesn't always mean a happy ending, but seeing Dimitri come to a full circle cushions the blow a bit. You know that hardened veteran who's seen it all and can't quite get away from his past? That's Varrock Sarfang in a nutshell. He was a legend among orcs, having fought through many wars and lived to tell the tale. Unfortunately, part of why he survived for so long really isn't a happy story. He, like many of his fellow Horde buddies, became corrupted by the blood of Manaroth, which gave them more power, but also turned them into bloodthirsty brutes who slaughtered innocents for kicks and giggles, all in the name of the Horde. While the curse did go away eventually, the guilt of his actions hit him hard. He doesn't even try to deny it. He knows and regrets what he did, but he can't say that his actions weren't his own cause he voluntarily drank the tainted blood. Oh, what's that? Still not enough emotional torment? Well, how's about we have his son killed by the Lich King and then raised to be a Death Knight? Overkill, thy name is Blizzard. He continued to fight with a much heavier emphasis on honor, but his path continued to haunt him. And the new head honcho of the Horde, Sylvanas, really rubbed him the wrong way with her own treachery. Finally having enough of her bullshit, Varrock confronts Sylvanas in the hopes of restoring glory to the Horde, and, well, she's an all-powerful ruler of the undead, so our buddy here was way in over his head from the start.
Would you say he was between a Varrock and a hard place? Traitor! Not apologizing in this life or the next, sweetie.
Yeah, Varrock didn't stand a chance. He resigned himself to a warrior's death, but was spared by Anduin. After being given a chance to escape and find his own path, Varrock meets up with Orc Jesus and his redemption journey begins, beginning to realize the similarities between the Horde and Alliance, how they all share so much regret and guilt, and they're fighting because centuries of old ghosts compel them forward. In his final act to restore honor to the Horde and stop the mad Sylvanas, he challenged her to one-on-one combat. Yeah, he had a snowball's chance in Molten Core, but he didn't care. He swung at her, chewed her out, saying that the Horde will endure without her, didn't take any of her crap, and he never stopped until she finally struck him dead. Even after all his sins, he managed to die a hero, a symbol of honor and an inspiration for the Horde. Hopefully his legacy will remain fresh in our minds for years to come and remind us that orcs are seriously awesome in everything they do. While the majority of us are still waiting for the next chapter of Deltarune, we still got the fantastic and definitely not overrated Undertale to overanalyze and critique all of these years later. And speaking of overanalysis, let's talk about Flowey the Flower. You know, the cutesy little plant that you meet at the beginning of the game who tells you about love and tries to kill you seconds after meeting him? But before that, let's talk about Azrael Dreamer, who this section is about. I know, just give me a second. Azrael is the prince of monsters roaming in the underground, son of Asgore and Toriel Dreamer. One day, a human canonically named Chara fell into the underground and they were adopted by Asgore and Toriel. Chara and Azrael became adopted siblings and decided to come up with a plan to go back to the outside world. However, Chara died shortly later. In response to their death, Azrael combined Chara's soul with his, and together they went to the nearby human village to satisfy Chara's last wish of seeing the golden flowers of their village. Unfortunately, the villagers thought Azrael killed Chara, and they attacked him. Despite getting away, Azrael succumbed to his injuries and died. Well, that was dark, but what does this have to do with the redemption arc or Flowey? Well, the court scientist Alphys was doing determination experiments and created Flowey by injecting determination into a flower, which was then planted in the same garden Azrael died in. Flowey was a reincarnation of Azrael, but without a soul, so he did not feel any emotion or empathy for others. With the determination injection, Flowey had the ability to restart timelines at will. He used this power to manipulate the monsters of the underground to amuse himself and did his own playthroughs of Undertale in a way. He spared everyone, killed everyone, got killed, and usually got killed by Sans a lot. Throughout these many timelines, Flowey became more and more bored and more resentful. It wasn't until Frisk showed up that he actually felt something again, especially when he couldn't manipulate timelines anymore. Alright, background done. Long story short, in the true pacifist route, Flowey eventually absorbs all the souls of the underground, monster and human alike, to become Azrael, god of hyperdeath. While Frisk couldn't really die, they couldn't damage Azrael either. In order to beat him, you need to awaken the monster souls inside of Azrael and through the power of friendship, show Azrael that bonds are the true power. In response, Azrael feels empathy and compassion for the first time, and in response, lowers the barrier and frees all of the monsters from the underground. That took a while, so let's wrap it up. Despite Azrael's carnage as Flowey, thanks to Frisk's efforts, he was able to regain his emotions and free all of the monsters, despite doing so means his own life would end after all the souls left him. While this is heartwarming, similar to Leliana and Daniel, player choice could change the outcome, as going down the genocide route, Flowey would just die thanks to Frisk and Chara. Azrael is a great character with a great conclusion, just go the pacifist route. Or else, like Flowey, he'll be dying to Sans a lot trying to finish the game. Oh, and if you try to play neutral, need I say more? Time for the Kingdom Hearts entry, and you know what that means!
Okay, here we go.
Among its massive cast of characters, Kingdom Hearts primarily focuses on the duo of Sora and Riku. Though I think there might have been this other character alongside them at some point. Sora is the ideal hero, kind and selfless to a fault. Riku, on the other hand, is very much the archetypical anti-hero, a person willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish his somewhat ambiguous goal. While both of them dream of seeing other worlds, Riku is a bit more gung-ho about it. When the forces of darkness invade, Riku is all too eager to let it happen, as he can finally achieve his dream of seeing other worlds. Throughout the story, we see Riku slowly succumb to the darkness. It eventually becomes less about him wanting to save Kairi and more about him proving his superiority to Sora. After losing to him, Riku is so distraught that he willingly lets himself get possessed by Ansem. While Riku does ultimately regret his decision and helps close the door to darkness in the end, he still has a lot to prove. Then we get to Chain of Memories, where Riku's redemption arc really begins. In Reverse Rebirth, the part 2 of Chain of Memories, we learn he is very much still struggling with the temptation of darkness. Even though Ansem was defeated, a piece of him still lingers within Riku. Hence, he needs to overcome the darkness within him. Unfortunately, that's not exactly an easy thing when dark mode is the most reliable option that he has to fight against Organization 13. That, and the fact that his replica is still around, doesn't make things easier. As for a solution, I'll let Just a Pancake sum it up.
Use both light and darkness.
You are a genius.
Yep, in the end, Riku ultimately decides to both accept light and darkness and walk his own path. Personality-wise, he went from a cocky, bratty, cool guy to a generally loyal ally and hero. The one problem with Riku is that his arc essentially loops. After Chain of Memories, we saw him repeatedly go through the same struggle of having to accept the darkness within him. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't ruin him as a character or anything, but it's really annoying to see his development not really go anywhere further. If we wanted to expand further on Riku's redemption, why not have him feel more guilty about the whole I did everything to save Kairi bit? In fact, why not have Kairi herself be involved and show how she felt about it? I guess I'll just put that on a never-ending list of things to address in a hypothetical rewriting Kingdom Hearts editorial. If you're an outsider looking in, you may look at Kratos and only see a bloodthirsty, vengeful psycho. Well, I am here to tell you that you are dead deadly accurate. Okay, yeah, his hands are anything but clean, but people seem to forget that his life's been kinda crappy, honestly. First of all, when he was just a kid, his little brother Deimos was kidnapped by the gods because they believed he was going to destroy Olympus, which turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy since Kratos ultimately kills all the gods. So that was kinda stupid, Zeus. Then, years later, the god Ares makes a deal with Kratos to basically use him as an instrument of death and tricks him into killing his beloved family. Which is why Kratos is so pale. His skin is embedded with their ashes. Then he has to go through a whole fustercluck of events that include giving him the powers of a god, having them ripped away from him, dying more times than I change my socks, being haunted by the memories of his sins, watching someone else give their life to help him, only to finally take down the Olympians and try to off himself and fail. The moral of this story? Great gods are the worst. So, God of War 3 ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, which brings us to 2018's God of War. Already off the bat, you can see a major difference in Kratos between this game and the last game. For For starters, he's got his own old man Logan beard. More importantly, he's a little less Kratos Slice and more chill and wise. He also has a son now, and despite his kinda condescending attitude, he loves his son dearly and doesn't want him to follow the same path he took. Unfortunately, he's forced to confront his past and face the possibility of his son repeating his mistakes. Just want to briefly mention the scene where he has to don the Blades of Chaos once again. Even though it's short, this was a powerful moment in the game. Kratos never wanted to use those cursed tools again. He wanted to run as far away from his past as possible. But with the safety of his son on the line, he'll bear the burden no matter how much it hurts. And boy, does it hurt! His own actor actually started crying during production. That's how hard it hurts. Yeah, it's easy to call Kratos a monster for everything he's done before now, but here's the thing. A real monster wouldn't feel remorse for his actions. He's in that state of mind where if something pure comes along, he thinks, maybe I won't screw this up. And with everything that happened during his upbringing, you want him to find that inner peace. He knows he can't undo his actions, but he can help prevent his only son from truly following in his footsteps and give him the choice he never really got, to be the kind of man he wants to be.
Oh yes, the past can hurt, but the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it.
So to sum up, if you want to curb your anger streak, grow a beard.
Well, why not? It worked for me. Some days.
What comes to mind when you hear the words Wild West? For me, my mind instantly goes to cowboys, the showdowns at high noon, the "this town ain't big enough for the two of us" lines, and of course, the Outlaws. Red Dead Redemption gave us a look into the life of one such outlaw, John Marston. In the opening of the game, he's running with the Vanderlinde gang, a bunch of crooks who like to pretend they're somewhat nobler than the usual banditos. Spoiler, they aren't. When John gets left behind after a robbery gone wrong, he thought he was gonna spend the rest of his life rotting in jail, given the gang's boss, Dutch, decided he wasn't worth saving. Thankfully, Arthur Morgan and Sadie Adler saved him from that fate and helped him get away from the gang with his wife and son. Some years later, after the gang had self-destructed following a betrayal, John is living a relatively quiet life, only taking up arms to protect himself and his family from bounty hunters looking to make a quick buck. He was content with his place in the world until it came crumbling down when a bunch of government goons showed up to kidnap his wife and son. Their demands? Kill the last remnants of his old gang. So John does as they ask, confronting old friends and old sins as he puts an end to what's left of the Vanderlinde gang, culminating in Dutch committing suicide, finally putting an end to the madness. Of course, this story doesn't have a happy ending. John returns home expecting to return to his quiet life, but is betrayed by those government goons. In succeeding and killing the rest of his old gang, he's merely proven to them that he's the most dangerous of them all and thus must be put down. To save his wife and son one last time, John goes out like a hero. Facing impossible odds, he and his faithful gun take out as many of the sons of bitches down with him to hell as he can. John Marston was a simple man. All he wanted was to keep his family safe. For a time, he was willing to do horrible things to do it, thanks to being wrapped up in the Vanderlinde gang. When he broke away from it, he chose to live a law-abiding life, but that drive to do right by his family never dimmed or wavered. In the end, he made the ultimate sacrifice to keep them safe, and truly died a hero's death. Gamma Sonic Adventure, the classic tale of a robot learning the power of friendship. A cliched oldie, but a goodie. Team Plasma, Pokemon Black and White. While half stuck around our monocled baddie, the other half went with N to become Pokemon protectors. Cecil Harvey from Final Fantasy IV, from Dark Knight to Errand Boy to Paladin. Not a bad resume, personally. Connor from Detroit Become Human. He could be your best friend or your worst enemy. The choice is literally up to you. Poison Ivy from Batman Arkham Knight. Not really much of a build-up, but it was noble of her to give her life to save Gotham. Nature always wins. Axel from Kingdom Hearts. He just wanted to share some sea salt ice cream with his buddies. Plus, you already know where I stand with this guy. The tale of Ace Attorney's staple prosecutor is a long, long one. It's a climb to success that's full of trials, tribulations, and most of all, retribution. Miles Edgeworth debuts as a prosecutor known for not taking any shit with his profession. He seeks to always win a case, regardless of the foul methods he pursues to do so. It all stems from his hatred towards criminals for his father's death and defense attorneys for the injustice brought upon with the following trial. Ironically, his methods don't make him any less scummy than those he hated, forging evidence, concealing testimonies, and turning a blind eye on the truth. While some people enjoy his snide antics, I know a couple people who would rather see him choke on an urchin. And, figuratively speaking, that's pretty much what happened to him. Ever since his first defeat against the titular Phoenix Wright, his ego got knocked down a few pegs and his worldview got thrown for a loop. While he hasn't quite dropped his arrogance, we start to see how keen he's gotten to seek the truth rather than score easy wins. He eventually found out the truth behind his past. His mentor, the man who influenced his whole career, was the one who killed his father and ruined his childhood. Since then, Miles took a hiatus from his court duties, supposedly faking a suicide. But in actuality, he took time to reflect on his life choices and what mattered to him as a lawyer in the end. He even got back to Phoenix to update on what he's learned. Despite being the reason for his growth, Phoenix himself faced an internal conflict in his career that he had to learn from. This is evident from the teamwork with Miles in Farewell My Turnabout. Phoenix, in a position where he had to defend a guilty man, is reminded by Miles how important it is to seek the truth. It's what saved him, his friends, and other innocent people by the end of the case. Miles has grown into an inspiring companion, even helping Phoenix get back on track after his old friend fixed his path. But whether or not his disparaging habit has died down is debatable. That's where journeying in his perspective comes into play. In Trials and Tribulations and the Investigations games, we get to play as a redeemed Miles as he solves the cases while Phoenix is indisposed. We can see he's not always so consistently irritable as he used to be, seemingly speaking respectfully to his rivals, whether they're a professional or amateur. We even got to see him make friends and see a different side of his personality. However, much like Phoenix, just because he's experienced growth doesn't mean he's still not challenged. In Investigations 2, he found temptations to rekindle with his father's legacy and thought about becoming a defense attorney to fully redeem himself. It doesn't help that he slowly began to see how zealous and controlling the committee of prosecutors can get. Heck, he even put down his badge to save his friend whom he believed was falsely accused. You can see where Objection Man's barbs had rubbed off from that decision. Still, even as a prosecutor, he abolished the committee and regained the confidence to pursue the truth with his own skills. We get to see how much he's changed by the time we reach Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice. He's finally appointed as chief prosecutor and does his job efficiently, whether it's inside or outside of court. Inside, he's still ruthless as ever, but is not above admitting his misjudgments when necessary. Outside, he pretty much cleaned all the corruption out of the office of prosecutor. He even commissioned a foreign prosecutor before he could rebuild trust in his own office. It's insane, but given what we've seen across the series, it's completely understandable. Not the foreign prosecutor part though, that one still needs fixing. Miles may have been a little overexposed, but the conflicts he went through often challenge his different perspectives. Plus, it goes beyond self-improvement and takes effect over the society around him. He could have just taken the easy route and quit being a prosecutor due to his shameful beginnings, but instead, he stayed and did his best to improve the standards of the profession. It's still reasonable to not be a fan of Miles, and yeah, he is a bit too much of a stick in the mud compared to the zanier Ace Attorney characters. Still, you gotta appreciate how amazing the path of this prosecutor turned out. Capturing a man's journey from villain to hero in ways that we can realistically connect with. All the while showing the impact he brought as he made the best out of the path presented for him. It may not be an action-packed adventure like most other video game characters, but by standing on one side of the scale of justice, he still earned peak redemption.
I'm the fiery Joker, and I would say that Ari's on her own redemption journey after that little Varrock joke.
So I guess that means you don't want my mac and cheese for dinner?
Journey's over.
Cut!
Hey everyone, everyone, this is Josh. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Please check out my other social media like my Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr. Check out my other channels such as Joshua Burner for reactions and other stuff, Dragon Fighter Gaming for tabletop, and Bob Equestria for cartoons. Consider checking below the video and donating to my Patreon, Streamlabs for my merchandise, or becoming a YouTube member. Thanks for watching.